Hello, welcome to the second video. This one should be a bit quicker than the first. For those of you who are taking notes on the computer, this is page 3-4 of your note guides. For those of you taking notes on paper, this is all of page 2. Okay, so we learned that the muscular system has 3 functions: movement, posture, maintenance of body temperature or body heat. And now we're talking about muscles themselves and the characteristics that muscles possess. So there are 5 characteristics of muscles: contractibility, excitability, extensibility, elasticity, and tone. So let's learn about those, shall we? Maybe. Contractibility is just like what it sounds like. It is the muscle's ability to make a contraction, okay? And what a contraction is defined as is a shortening of the distance of the muscle tendon unit. So like we talked about earlier, when this muscle contracts, the muscle fibers actually shorten, which is what causes the contraction, and the entire muscle plus tendon unit gets shorter. So that's what a contraction is. And that is one of the characteristics of muscle. It is able to contract. Next characteristic of muscle is excitability. And a synonym for excitability is irritability, right here. And so excitability means that the muscles are able to respond to stimuli and create impulses due to that stimuli. So what that means is that either the nervous system or a hormone acts upon the muscle and causes it to contract or relax. Okay, so the muscle responds to its stimuli, which is the nervous system signal or the hormones signal. Extensibility is the ability for a muscle to stretch. So in this picture, this girl is doing a hamstring and calf stretch and gastroc stretch. So basically, it's how long can that muscle tendon unit get before you experience a tear. So extensibility, how long can we extend or stretch that muscle before it's too far, before there's a tear. Elasticity is the ability of the muscle to bounce back or return to its original shape after it's been stretched. Everybody always has difficulty with determining the difference between extensibility and elasticity. Okay, so there's a picture of a rubber band here, or you can think of like an elastic hair tie. After we stretch out that rubber band, ooh, I have a hair tie on my wrist. After we stretch out that rubber band or that hair tie, okay, when you stop the stretch, guess what? It goes back to its original shape. So that's what elasticity is. After it has been extended or stretched, boom, it bounces right back to its original shape. Okay. And then the 5th characteristic and final characteristic of muscle is muscle tone. And what tone is defined as is the resting tension in a skeletal muscle. There's always a baseline level of contraction that's occurring within a skeletal muscle. And why is that? Well, because the nervous system is always sending a little bit of signal down so that the muscle is like partially contracted, okay? And we need that. We need that partial contraction because that is what helps us to maintain our posture, okay? It helps us with our balance, and it also helps us to be able to have reflexes, which we talk more about in the nervous system. But anywho, we need a baseline level of muscle tone for these things. So basically, it's our muscles are receiving an impulse from the nervous system to maintain a partial contraction, but not enough that it's going to create a movement. So not enough that it's going to cause a joint to move, but just enough that there is some contraction always going on. it says in the middle bullet point, some people have more resting muscle tone than others. Sure, you see those people who work out all the time and it kind of looks like they're flexing even when they're just standing still, okay? Those people have more resting muscle tone because they've exercised their muscles in a way that they have gotten a little bit bigger and have a little bit more tone in them at rest. Okay. Relating to tone are these next couple slides here. So in this example, it says that this person had a cast on their leg, and after having it on for 6 to 8 weeks, they removed the cast from his leg. And then it says that his calf muscle around the lower leg, the measurement around his lower leg, is 1 inch smaller than his other calf muscle. And so then it asks, well, what happened? Why when we removed that cast is his leg so much smaller? And this is why, tone, okay? So again, tone is when muscles are slightly contracted so that they're ready to respond to stimuli, ready to pull. So atrophy is what was happening with that man John's example right there. And atrophy is a word that we need to know. It is defined as the wasting away of muscle due to lack of use. Okay, so think about like an elderly individual who does not exercise as much as they used to, and their muscles get much smaller, okay? They don't have as much tone, and that's because they're not using them as much as they did before, and so that's what atrophy is. Or if you think of somebody who, say, had a spinal cord injury, and now all of a sudden they are unable to walk, so they have to utilize a wheelchair. If you witness that person's like lower extremities, their legs, they are eventually, after not utilizing those muscles for such a long period of time, they are physically going to become smaller. And it's not that the actual muscles themselves are going away, but they are getting smaller due to lack of use. So that's what atrophy is. So or the prefix a means without, trophy means development. So atrophy is without development, or the wasting away of muscle. And hypertrophy is the opposite. It is when muscle size increases, the size of a muscle cell increases with things like exercise, and it helps to, here's some pictures. In hypertrophy, hyper means excessive. So essentially it's this excessive development of muscles. So think like bodybuilder. Yeah, that picture right there. So those pictures, I'll try to move to the side, are showcasing somebody whose muscles had atrophied, okay, have gotten smaller due to lack of use, and somebody whose muscles have hypertrophied or gotten bigger due to excessive use, okay. So now this is talking about muscle fatigue. So we said how our muscles, especially our skeletal muscles, easily fatigue. And so then it's like, well, what is fatigue? And this will probably make a bit more sense after you watch the video about the sliding filament theory and how a muscle contracts. But again, we'll go over this when I'm back. But essentially, for a muscle to contract, we need a couple things. We need the impulse from the nervous system, which releases calcium into the muscle fibrils, the myofibrils. And so that's what starts the process of a contraction. But in order for a muscle to contract, it needs energy, right? Everything needs energy in order to work. So the energy that a muscle needs to contract is this thing called ATP. And we could go into details about what that means, but all we need to know is ATP. Okay, so ATP is essentially glucose in our body that is broken down to a molecular component of energy. So ATP is how our muscles receive this energy in order to form contractions. Okay, So when we are working out, say, and we need an influx of this ATP so that our muscles have the energy to contract, okay, the breakdown of ATP causes lactic acid to build up within our muscles, okay? And so lactic acid is actually what causes our muscles to fatigue or not be able to contract as much as they could before, the presence of that lactic acid. So then it's like, well, how do we get lactic acid out of there so that we can utilize our muscles again, so that we can get over this muscle fatigue? And a way to get rid of that lactic acid, to get it back out of the muscles and help to convert it back to glucose, is by way of increasing oxygen, okay? Oxygen to that area. And then also hydration, like drinking water, helps to convert that lactic acid back to glucose and flush it out of the muscle itself. So when we're talking about oxygen, that's why when you exercise, you start to breathe more heavily. Your heart rate starts to go up because your muscles are getting fatigued, because the energy is breaking down and causing that buildup of lactic acid. So your body's saying, uh-oh, this is happening. I need to start breathing more frequently so that I have more oxygen. And my heart needs to start beating more frequently so that I can supply that oxygen to my muscles to try and help combat this fatigue. Okay. And again, all of that ATP stuff should hopefully make a little bit more sense after you watch the other video. Okay. And that's essentially all that we need to know at this point. And so you should have the first like 2 full pages of your paper note guides or the first 4 pages of your computer note guides completed at this point. I'll see you in class when I get back. Have a good day.